Good evening, everyone. How is everyone tonight? We are going to get into our chapter, but like always, we are first going to do our prayer and then move into the book reading. I want to welcome all of you here. Thank you for the thumbs up and the likes and the hearts and all that. Thank you so much. And let's get into the prayer. Good. Glad to hear that, Paula. You're doing great. Today's prayer. The Lord is my strength and my shield. In him my heart trusts. Psalms 28:7. The Lord is my strength and my shield. In him my heart trusts. And that is our prayer for today. All right, I'm going to get comfortable. And we are going to get started. And of course, I have my drink with me, so I can take a sip here and there when my throat gets dry. You know how that is. Welcome, welcome, everyone. Chapter 37. So excited for tonight. And I'm really excited to get into this chapter. I did come on a little bit early, but that's okay. That's okay. Here we go. 2 months later, Libby tore into her condo, unfastening the buttons on her business jacket with one hand as she tossed her briefcase to the floor with the other. She kicked the high-heeled pumps from her feet, and one flew onto the sofa, and the other landed somewhere in the kitchen. She didn't care. She was already late, and Philip would be over to pick her up in a matter of minutes. Julie Busby, one of the doctor's wives, was holding a surprise birthday party for her husband Scott, and Philip and Libby had been invited to attend. They couldn't be late. It would ruin the surprise. The party was at the Busby property, north of Seattle, outside of Woodensville. According to the invitation, there would be hay rides, a buffet dinner, and later on in the evening, a bonfire. No way Libby could ever wear her suit and pumps. Jerking a sweater out of her closet sent the hanger into a seesaw rocking motion. While pulling the sweater over her head, Libby grabbed jeans and stuffed her feet inside her slip-ons. She barely had time to run a brush through her hair and put on some lipstick, and the doorbell rang. Philip! Libby squirted on a quick spray of her favorite perfume and dragged in a deep breath to steady her pounding heart before she opened the door. Philip's eyes widened as he stepped into the condo. It looks like a cyclone landed here, he said. Looking past her, Libby's suit jacket was tossed on the floor, followed by her skirt, leaving a trail that led right into her bedroom. I was running a bit behind schedule, she said, hoping he didn't hear the breathlessness quality to her voice. Libby, Libby, he said, kissing her forehead and holding her close for a moment. It seemed like he wanted to say more, but he hesitated. Get out your coat, or we'll be late. My coat, she repeated, opening the closet and grabbing her dark wool jacket. The weather had turned decidedly cooler over the last week. With his hand on the small of her back, Philip led her to the elevator. Libby didn't relax until they made it inside his car. Then and only then did she breathe a sigh of relief. "You weren't at the gym this morning," he commented. "No, I needed to get to the office early. It was necessary if she intended to leave in time to make the birthday party. She need not have worried about missing out on gym time. She had gotten a good workout on her mad dash from the office to her condo. She tried. She'd made a genuine effort not to put in too many hours in the office, but all her good intentions had quickly fallen by the wayside. By the end of the day, she was too tired to think, too tired to feel." What Robin had said to her before she rejoined the firm had often come to mind over the past few weeks. Her dearest friend had asked her, deep down, she was choosing to bury herself in her work as a way to forget about the baby she loved. At the time, Libby hadn't been 100% sure. She was now. Working unbelievably long hours, felt comfortable. Inside the office, she could block out the pain. She had purpose, ambition, and drive, and she was able to convince herself the firm needed her. Mrs. Reed needed her. Robin was at the gym. Libby glanced at Philip. "I called to tell her I couldn't make it." She figured Philip would comment on her absence and held her breath, waiting for his censure. None came. "Robin mentioned your call." Philip was quiet for several minutes when he maneuvered through the busy Seattle traffic, taking back streets to get to the I-5 ramp. Once they were on the freeway, he asked her, "So how's my sweater coming along?" He had to ask. He didn't berate her for all the overtime she had been putting in. Instead, he just asked pointed questions. The fact was that she hadn't picked up her needles all week. Not a single stitch. "The sweater's great. I'm up to the armholes on the back." "Weren't you at that same place the last time I asked?" "Which was when? 2 weeks ago? 3? "Yes, well, it's been a busy few weeks." She hadn't gotten home before 7 a single night. She hadn't meant for this to happen. With Philip's help, she'd made up a list of rules, modeled after some of his own. These were guidelines that helped him, and Libby had hoped they might keep her from falling into the same old groove of all work and no play. Rule number 1. She would never bring work home again. Rule number 2. She would keep up with her exercise program. Rule number 3. She would stay in touch with Ava. Rule number 4. She would make time for her newfound friends, Robin, Lydia, Abby, and Sharon. Up until now, her track record hadn't exactly been stellar. It didn't take a week for her to fall back into the same pattern of bringing work home. She didn't feel good about it, and the only reason she did was because of Philip. He called her every night, and if she wasn't home before 7, she could see the irritation in him. Philip hadn't said anything negative about her return to the firm. Really, she hadn't been able to turn down that kind of money, and her savings account was so low it frightened her. Her credit cards were all hovering near their credit limits, and she needed to pay them off as quickly as possible. The job offer had come exactly at the right time, and for more reasons than she had given Philip and Robin, because she felt she would rather work from an office at the firm. Herschel negotiated the termination of her leave. She had kept up with the exercise program with a few skip days. Before going back to the firm, she'd work out at least 4 times a week, and more often 5. That had quickly dwindled down to 3, and this week she had been to Frankie and Johnny's only once. Libby promised herself next week would be different. Once she was done, oh, I gotta get my legs more comfortable. There we go. Once she was done setting up the Buckley account, straightening out the mess Ben had made of Martha Reed's paperwork, and training her new paralegal, Libby wouldn't need to work these long hours. But for now, it was becoming harder and harder to get work done in the office, with more meetings, conference calls, and other demands on her time. It was either arrive early and stay late or take work home. As for keeping up with Ava, they had talked at least twice this week. Ava was back in school. Everything seemed to be going okay, although the teenager didn't often mention her classes. Libby worried that there was something Ava wasn't telling her. This weekend, Libby planned to take her to lunch so they could chat one-on-one. She suspected word had gotten out at the school that she was the mother of the baby Peter's family had adopted. "You're frowning," Philip commented, glancing away from the road. "Anything wrong?" "No, nothing. I was just thinking about Ava." "What's going on with her?" "I'm not sure, but something." "When did you last talk to her?" he asked. "Tuesday, I think." She meant to call her again, but the week had been hectic and one demand after another. Thankfully, Libby's new paralegal seemed to be a good fit, but settling into a working relationship required time and patience. "You're frowning again," Philip said, chuckling softly. "Oh, sorry. I was thinking about Sarah. The new paralegal is working out?" "Melinda's great." Libby turned her head and looked out the window to hide a yawn. Philip saw it. "You're exhausted." "Oh, I'm fine." "Really?" "Close your eyes for a few minutes," he suggested. "I'll take another 20 minutes in this traffic. I want you to have a good time tonight." And he patted her thigh. Following his suggestion, Libby closed her eyes and leaned her head against the window. It did feel good to relax. Although she didn't want to admit it, she was bushed. It had been a difficult week. She was out of practice with working these hours, and everything seemed to be hitting her at once. I'd taken the time and effort to convince the Buckleys to come on board. The Nyquists had decided to take their business elsewhere, despite Libby's reassurance that they wouldn't be lost in a large firm. But her promises to give them her personal attention, they decided against it. Herschel, however, was a man of his word. In a matter of a few months, she would be welcomed into the firm as full partner. Every time Libby thought about seeing her name added to the letterhead, her heart did a small beep-bop of satisfaction. Libby deserved to be partner, and it gratified her that her role in the firm had finally been acknowledged. It had taken the loss of Mrs. Reed's account to show them her worth. Well, they were making it up to her now. The car slowed and Libby opened her eyes, shocked to discover that she had slept nearly the entire drive there. They were in Woodlandville at the Busby property. Because it had a surprise party, Philip had to park his vehicle in a vacant field out of sight of the house. and the road. They walked toward the house, hand in hand. Julie Busby had arranged for everyone to hide in the barn. She planned to tell Scott his present was in the outbuilding. He had assumed it was the quarter horse that he wanted. Julie had gotten him the horse, too, but when he walked into the barn, all of his best friends would be waiting there, and the horse. Julie's plan worked beautifully, and Scott was more than just surprised. He seemed completely stunned. The party was well planned. One of the women Libby had met at the yarn store, Beth Ann Hamlin, Robin's former sister-in-law, owned a party business and had assisted with the arrangements. The buffet dinner was wonderful, followed by live music and a hootenanny style song fest. After the meal, the birthday celebration continued with a horse-drawn hayride. Everyone was having a wonderful time, and there were lots of teasing and laughter. As the evening wore on, Libby did her best to disguise how tired she truly was. She knew almost everyone from the hospital and mingled with Philip and Scott's friends easily. It was good to see everyone again, especially Sharon Jennings. Instead of the traditional candles on the birthday cake, Julie had arranged for a large bonfire in the middle of the pasture. Everyone roasted huge marshmallows in Scott's honor, with a lot of good-natured joking about his advancing age. After the traditional singing at the birthday song, Libby bellowed another yawn, hoping no one noticed. Unfortunately, Philip caught. "I need to get you home before you fall asleep on your feet." It was early yet, and she hated to spoil his fun. "In a bit," she said, linking her arm with his. Without question, they were considered a couple now, and there were several joking comments about when they were going to make it official. Philip easily laughed off the good-natured teasing. Not so with Libby. She wanted to marry him, yearned to start a family. Once she achieved her goal and was made partner, she'd feel free to take the necessary time away from the firm. Her position would be secure. After the first couple departed, Libby agreed it was time for them to go too. On the ride back into the city, Philip seemed unusually quiet. "Tired?" she asked, struggling to stay awake herself. The warm car, the fun evening, and simply being with Philip had eased the tension from her shoulders. He didn't answer right away. Not particularly. Libby sat up straighter. Then there was another reason for his silence, and she had a good idea what it might be. "What's on your mind?" Again he was quiet for several moments. She noticed that his hands tightened around the steering wheel, and he stared straight ahead, not chancing a look in her direction. "Basically, I want to know how you plan to balance your work life and your real life, because what you're doing now isn't working." "My real life," she repeated, amused. "Libby, I'm serious." "Yes, I know you're serious. I am too. You have fallen back into the same old grind. This is exactly what I was afraid would happen if you quit your own practice. I helped you set up those rules only because you asked me to. As far as I can see, they haven't done you a bit of good. You've almost given up working out onto gym. You've only talked to Ava once this week. And you can't remember the last time you picked up your knitting. Philip, I know it looks bad. It is bad. We were supposed to meet for drinks on Wednesday. And what happened? It wasn't like he didn't already know. Okay, so I was a few minutes late. She had been held up at the office. 32 minutes to be exact. I just couldn't leave. So you said, his mouth thinned into a hard line. It isn't just me who's changed, you know, she said. It's hard to talk to you. It's like there's a concrete wall between us. You were like this when we first met. Like what? I don't know, emotionally stagnant? We used to talk all the time. Text, too. But if I text you, I don't get a response. Mainly because you're texting to tell me you're going to be late again. That's not true. Libby didn't want to fight, not tonight, not any night. It had been a long week, and they were both tired. Finding fault with each other was far too easy. She wanted to talk to Philip about the changes in him, but she could see it would serve no purpose now. Silence stretched between them like a barbed wire fence, the barbs ready to draw blood if they dared attempt to climb over it. Finally, Libby couldn't stand it any longer. It was a lovely party. Julie pulled it off. Scott couldn't have been more surprised. I was just happy you could spare the time, he muttered, not bothering to hide his sarcasm. Philip, please, don't be like this. You'll always have an excuse, Libby. Just wait. It'll be the same next month and the month after that. We both knew this could happen, and despite your efforts and promises, everything has fallen apart within 2 months. Please, Philip, I don't want to fight. Not after what we've had such a good evening. Reaching over, she placed her hand on his forearm and gave him a pleading look. He exhaled and nodded. I don't want to argue either. The silence was a bit more comfortable until Philip said, You think that if you bury yourself in your work, you won't have to think about Amy Jo? Libby bit down on her teeth, clenching her jaw in an effort not to give in to the hot surge of anger that instantly rose in her chest. She waited until her heart calmed before responding. His comment was a low blow and not appreciated. You're not going to leave this alone, are you? He exited the freeway and stopped at a red light. Keeping his gaze focused on the road, he exhaled a slow breath and said, Okay, you're right. I apologize. I love you, Libby. I hope that the two of us could build a future together. She reached out and placed her hand on his arm. I want a life with you, Philip, and my career. I love what I do, and I'm good at it. She thought about Martha Reed and the Buxbys. Just give me a few months, and I promise everything will change. It would be a rough few months. She wouldn't lie to him. He needed to prepare for that. And she would be late a lot of nights and miss a few sessions at the gym. She would finish his sweater, but it wouldn't happen before Christmas. Philip pulled up on the curb in front of her condo, then exhaled slowly, his shoulders rising and falling as he waged some internal battle. All right, Libby, I'll do my best to be patient. Everything will right itself soon, she promised, and pressed her head against his shoulders. Come on up for a few minutes, all right? He turned off the engine, and together they rode up in the elevator. His mood lightened and she was grateful. When she picked up her discarded clothes and shoes, Philip poured them each a glass of port. They cuddled on the sofa. Libby was nestled in his arms and pressed her head against his chest. She enjoyed the steady, strong beat of his heart. Leaning down, he kissed her. His mouth lingered on hers, and Libby raised her arm and gently stroked the back of his neck. They had managed to avoid a major confrontation, and she was grateful. Philip was willing to give her the time she needed to settle back into a reasonable routine. Everything would be different. It had to be. Libby wouldn't allow history to repeat itself. Oh, I don't know, you guys. What do you think? History to repeat itself. It already sounds like it already is. We shall see. The second week of November, Libby tossed back her covers and fell into bed. The firm had challenged her to prove she could be an effective member of their outreach efforts. As a result, the addition to her office duties, she was expected to wine and dine potential clients in the evenings and not returning home until 10 or 11 at night. The last month had been an endless series of making connections, serving as a hostess at these special dinners. Her newly polished social skills had proved to be beneficial, and she had brought in 2 new clients in the last 3 weeks. Her role within the firm was expanding, and while she was encouraged, she had paid a stiff price in her personal life. Despite his promise to give her time, Philip had grown increasingly impatient with her schedule. She had tried reasoning with him. He should be able to understand that this was a huge professional opportunity. It was vital that he realize how important it was for her to prove to the partners that they had made the right decision in asking her to return. Like every other business, they wanted proof that their investment in her was going to pay the necessary dividends. It felt good to grow as a professional and see herself becoming skilled in the areas where she had been weak before. But it was just so frustrating that there weren't enough hours in the day for all the things she wanted to order to live the rich, full life she had hoped to have. Instead, she was caught in a crazy balancing act, looking to reassure the firm's partners and at the same time maintain her relationship with Philip and the other friends she had made. She didn't want to believe it was either or situation. Philip had grown distant. The emotional walls were becoming thicker and harder to penetrate. He was often sarcastic and cranky and eager to start an argument. Libby tried to be patient. She bit her tongue so often she feared it had permanent teeth marks. His own surgery schedule had increased. One after another, surgeons opted for early retirement. The hospital was hiring a replacement, but the interview process was taking far longer than anyone anticipated. As a result, Philip's workload had increased dramatically. Philip often phoned her between surgeries, asking her to meet him, to take time for a cup of coffee, to sneak away for lunch, or to just stop working long enough for them to contact. Each time, Libby had no choice but to put him off. As much as she would have liked to spend time with him, she couldn't just walk away from the office because he had an hour or less free. She had responsibilities too. Twice now they had argued so bitterly that she had to walk away to cool down. "What happened to the woman I fell in love with?" Philip demanded. "I'm right here. Nothing's changed," Libby insisted. He laughed, scoffing at her feet. Are you the same woman who took time to help a pregnant teenager? Of course I am. When did you last speak to Ava? Libby clenched her fist at her sides. She can call me too, you know. Philip just stared at her and shook his head. And that wasn't the end of his barrage. Sharon tells me that since you started work, you haven't been to the nursery not even once. Libby had to acknowledge that she hadn't taken the time to rock the newborns. I haven't, and I miss it. Sharon misses you, and so do the babies. You were wonderful with them. I fell in love with you, watching you sing to the babies. His eyes grew dark and sad, as if the woman he spoke of was forever gone. I was unemployed. I had time on my hands. I don't any longer. I have a job now. Other responsibilities. He just stared at her as if he hadn't heard a word she said. How's Robin? He asked. The question gave Libby a reason to smile. Just fine. Really? When was the last time you talked to her? This week, she shot back. Although, now that he asked, she wasn't completely sure. The days flew by so quickly. What Libby didn't mention was the sarcastic comment Robin had made the last time they connected. They were supposed to meet up for a drink after work, and Libby had canceled at the last minute. Robin hadn't taken kindly to being put off. It had been the second time in as many weeks. Now, tired as she was, Libby lay on her back, staring up at the ceiling, assessing the last few months. The days had flown by, seeming to trip over one another like fallen dominoes. Scott's birthday party seemed like it was just last weekend, but it was almost a month ago. Soon it would be Thanksgiving, and Christmas would be upon them. Philip had invited her to fly to Arizona to meet his parents for Thanksgiving. It had broken her heart to turn him down. Ironically, he hadn't seemed the least bit troubled. He simply shrugged it off, almost as if he didn't care. The sound of the doorbell startled her. Libby sat up in bed and glanced at the clock on her nightstand. It was nearly 1 o'clock in the morning. The only person she could think of would be Ava, and the thought filled her with apprehension. Libby had connected with Ava only a few times lately, and the girl wasn't happy. She wasn't doing well in her classes and was fighting with her grandmother. Peter's family had put their home up for sale and already purchased a house outside of the neighborhood. Grabbing her robe, Libby stuffed her arms into the sleeves, tied the belt around her waist. Before she reached the front door, the doorbell chimed again. Checking the peephole, she was shocked to discover a disheveled Philip standing in the hallway outside her door. He looked terrible. Apparently, he had been walking in the rain because what she could see of his coat, it was drenched. Rainwater dripped from his hair. Unlocking the deadbolt, she tossed open the door, and with her heart in her throat, "Philip, what's happened? Are you okay?" He looked at her and blinked as if he didn't know where he was, or how he had gotten to her condo. Running his fingers through his hair, he didn't seem to know what to say. Taking him by the hand, she led him into the living room and helped him out of his raincoat. "What time is it?" he asked before he flopped onto the sofa. He leaned forward and stared down at the carpet, his arms dangling between his knees. "Almost 1. She sat next to him and took his hands in hers. They were shockingly cold. She rubbed them to start the circulation flowing back into his fingers. "What happened?" she whispered. "Just let me hold you for a moment," Libby had never seen him like this. She climbed onto the sofa on her knees and wrapped her arms as far around him as they would go, resting her cheek against the top of his wet head. She gently brushed the thick strands of hair from his forehead, while softly singing the way she had done with the babies. It must have been 10 minutes before he spoke. "I lost a baby this afternoon." Libby had guessed it was something like that. Philip took death personally, as if he were responsible, as if life or death was a decision he made instead of God. She yearned to remind him that he was only an instrument, but knew that he did not want to hear that. At this point, she doubted he'd believe her. This was a special child, long anticipated. He paused as if every word caused him pain. The mother underwent 5 IVF attempts, and the baby came early and with a heart defect. This child was their only chance for family, and she begged me to take every measure necessary to save her son. Philip paused and didn't seem able to continue. Several moments passed before he spoke again. "He died on the operating table. We weren't able to resuscitate him. He lived less than 5 hours, and I had to tell the parents." He rubbed his hands across his face. By now, Libby was so affected by his grief that her throat was clogged and she couldn't speak. She could only imagine how the parents had reacted to the news. All Libby could do was hold him the same way he had held and comforted her when the adoption had followed through. She would have given anything to lessen his pain, to ease his horrific ache from his heart. After several minutes, he broke out of the embrace and stood. His eyes were more intense than she could ever remember. "I can't do this anymore." "Philip, my love," she whispered, aching with the desire to comfort him. "The hospital needs you. These babies need you. The worst thing you could do now is walk away. I agree that what happened would tear anyone's heart, but you can't allow it to destroy you." He stood and stared at her for several seconds. "I wasn't talking about the hospital, Libby. I was referring to us. It's over." A cold chill whipped through her. "You don't mean that." He was in pain, and he didn't know what he was saying. "This isn't a spur-of-the-moment decision," he said. Being calm now and completely reasonable, "Our relationship has been weighing on me for weeks. I thought I could do it, give you time you needed to get your work schedule settled. If I could hold out, if I could be patient, then eventually everything would even itself out. I've waited, and I can see now that nothing is going to change. If anything, it's gotten worse." "It will change, Philip. I promise it will." Slowly he shook his head. "You're a fool if you believe that, Libby. A fool." Her nails bit into her palms. She didn't take kindly to being called a fool. "You need to sleep on this. We belong together. You know it and I know it. Don't be so willing to give up on us. Not yet." Although it was difficult, she did her best to remain outwardly calm. On the inside, her heart was in a panic. She couldn't lose Philip. "I've watched what's happened, Libby. I've tried to be patient, but it's time to face facts here. This relationship isn't working for either of us." She denied it with a sharp shake of her head. "That's not true. It's working for me. I need you. You don't know what you're saying. Are you telling me you haven't figured out why you've had such little contact with Ava? In case you haven't noticed, I've been busy," she snapped, surprised by the venomous of her voice. Ava reminds you of Amy Jo. You couldn't deal with what happened with the Armstrongs decided to adopt her. As a result, you're avoiding Ava. She needed your encouragement and support when she was pregnant, but she needs it even more now. And where are you? At the office. You're always at the office because your work there gives you an escape. You don't need to think about what you've lost. And the same thing happened when your mother died, and just after Joe left you. You bury yourself in work. Every word was an accusation, each one flung at her as she stood defenseless and exposed. Stinging tears filled her eyes and quickly blinked them away. You aren't the man I thought you were either, she cried. The man I love would never say such ugly, mean things, whether they were true or not. Philip rubbed his hand along the back of his neck. I'm sorry. She swallowed hard, and because they found it difficult to speak, she accepted his apology with a short, abrupt nod. I am sorry, but not for what I said, Libby. He qualified, and although his voice was soft, almost gentle, his words pierced her heart. She squinted at him, not knowing what to think. I'm sorry because I really believe we could have been good together. He started towards the door. For one paralyzing moment, Libby stood frozen in the middle of her living room. Then she ran after him and grabbed a hold of his hand, stopping him. She allowed Joe to walk away. She wasn't going to let that happen again. Not with Philip. Don't go, she pleaded. Please, Philip, don't do this. He reached out to her, his hand at the base of her neck, and brought her into his arms. When he kissed her, it was with a locked up passion that was almost painful in its intensity. He released her so abruptly that she stumbled backwards. It's over, Libby, he said starkly. Don't make it any harder. He left, and leaving her stone cold and in shock. By late the following afternoon, Libby had left no fewer than 6 messages on Philip's cell. He didn't return her calls. When she couldn't reach him by phone, she stopped off at the hospital. Dr. Stone took a few days of personal time, Abby told her, after she found his office locked. Do you know where he went? Libby asked, trying to pretend nothing was amiss and failing miserably. She stood with her arms crossed and her heart in her throat. No, sorry, Abby told her. We've missed you around here. I've missed being here, Libby said, and realized how true it really was. If you see Philip, mention that I stopped by, would you? Oh, of course. Libby left the hospital and sat in her car for several moments. She knew she would have to go back to the office. She had gotten several stares when she walked out without an explanation. They would expect her back, but Libby had somewhere else she needed to go, someone else she needed to see. When she parked in front of Ava's house, she saw Jackson practicing free throws off the hoop in the Armstrong's driveway. He paused when he saw her and stared as if she were an alien who stepped out of a spaceship. Libby walked up to the front porch and rang the doorbell. Ava answered, and immediately her eyes brightened as she threw open the screen door. Libby opened her arms, and Ava walked into her embrace, hugging her so tightly that it hurt Libby's ribs. I've missed you so much, the teenager whispered. I never see you anymore. I should have come sooner, Libby whispered, as she ran her hair down the back of the girl's head. I'm sorry, so sorry, but I'm here now. Let's go someplace and talk, just you and me. Okay, Ava hesitated on the tail end of a sob. Just you and me? Oh, and that brings us to chapter 39. Oh, I never saw that coming, guys. I really didn't. I did not think that Philip would break up with her. Oh my goodness. Oh. But during our book club, we did discuss how we wondered if they were going to make it. Well, that was a good 2 chapters, and I want to wish you all a great evening, and I look forward to the last 2 chapters next Wednesday. Thank you, Mary Jo. You have a good night. Good night, Paula. Good night, everyone.